Okay, today's video is going to be on how to play an effective dive DPS. Now, the thing you need to remember about dive DPS is they have that burst window. If you've watched my support videos or how to deal with uh, dive heroes have a very bursty window in which they have to try and get an execute. They have to try and get a kill, and if they don't, they have to like back out, reset, and wait for their cooldowns to come back. So you have to time that window in with the rest of your team's engages and with the rest of your team's abilities, but also do so from an angle in which the enemy team is usually unsuspecting. Or in Psylocke's case, because she has such great mobility, she can get to off angles that normally would be inaccessible to other heroes like a Bucky or a Hela, right? So that being said, we're just gonna jump right into it.
Three, two, one.
So the very start, I can start up here and hold this angle. My take is going to be down here on the point here. And being up here means that I can see if there's someone who comes up here. I can see who walks out over here. And the Moon Knight and everyone else is holding this space in this area over here, right? So first and foremost, it's just about like scouting. Now, I can hold this angle because of the fact that as Psylocke, I have hypermobility here and I can get out if need be. But what I'm waiting for is I see the magic, but I know that I can't do anything about the magic. So instead, I go for the next best thing, which is I'm going to jump on the person to the back. Now, when you're playing a dive hero, because you have such a bursty window in which you can try and execute someone, I find the best target is the one at the very back. Not necessarily the support, but the one who's at the very, very back because they're not within the LOS of their team. So they're not going to get any help usually. And I'm going to jump on the payload here and start attacking the support, the cloak and dagger, who wasn't getting paid attention to. And I'm going to keep attacking her as, they're now getting pressured from both sides. But also what I want you to take notice of here is that I specifically do this not just to attack the cloak and dagger, but I'm getting double value by standing on the payload and keeping it from moving. So even though the entire enemy team is pushing forward and my team might be walking backwards, I am stalling the payload as well as getting an execute on the support in the back, right? Now, because of the fact that no one was looking at Cloak and Dagger, I turned it into a very easy 1v1 and stopped the payload. So now my team can walk back forward and retake this space. I'm trying to pressure out the now I'm trying to pressure out the invisible woman because of the fact that with only one support, the next person you can target is the other support. So that way they don't have any sort of sustain, right? If I just pressure her out and I just force her away or convince her not to heal, the rest of her team will eventually fall over. So playing a dive DPS, you're a lot of times specifically trying to target people, and who you target has to have a reason, right? Whether they have no cooldowns, maybe they're out of position. There's a lot of different reasons as to why you might target, individual heroes, but it's not always target the supports. You sometimes target the supports, but if there's a tank out of position, you target them. If there's a DPS going to flank or going to contest space, you might want to target the enemy DPS. Or if you kill one support, you target the other one. Or if you kill one DPS, you target the other DPS, so that way they don't have any damage output. There's a lot of different things you can do, and this is the reason why dive DPS can be so fun because of the fact that it's very much a game sense positioning and situational type hero. It's not always just about who can pump damage numbers up. So here we force out the Invisible because of that, nobody else is getting heals, and now she reveals herself, but because it's too late, magic falls over. And now we can just apply pressure and force them back. So here, at this point, we're just pumping damage. I push up because of the fact that it's safe, but the moment it starts to get too dangerous, I back out. I'm just doing this to charge my ult. Oh, and right here, I had noticed at this moment on my right, I noticed that Psylocke had poked out and had revealed herself through that window. So I went back towards her. And as soon as I hear the cloak, I start shooting. And because of it, I apply damage. And now she's got to get out because she's already low. She then dies. Part of your job as a DPS is to contest and make sure other DPS don't try to flank or take any other off angles, right? It's not, the tank's job should be here holding the convoy and making sure that they don't push forward. But when another enemy DPS tries to invade your space, it's part of your job to make sure that they're not in there, right? Whether it be me or Moon Knight, uh, all those off angles that people can access, like DPS have are great, especially at like contesting that space. But also dive DPS, a lot of times because of that bursty combo, are really good at taking 1v1. So that's almost like you know, that to me is something I look for because as soon as someone tries to flank my team, I try to meet them and catch them off guard. So here, knowing we have a numbers advantage, I'm just sort of pressuring them out and applying as much damage as I can, hoping we get another one to fall over like that. I look for the next one who's, you know, out of position. I go back for the squishies because I just want to push them out. Because once again, after we took out one support, I want to take out the other one. I turn around and I get bursted by the Magneto. That was my fault. I honestly thought I didn't expect that much burst, and I also didn't think that he'd be alive that long. So even though I died, it's entirely on me. And it's really bad because once again, once I fall over, then the enemy team has a window of opportunity here in which they can push and have the advantage. Now, I am specifically targeting from this angle here because I want to show you that all of my team is shooting from this position here, right? If they're all shooting, from this way, as soon as the enemy tries to take cover from here, if I was with my team, the enemy would take cover behind the payload and they'd have cover as the payload push up. Because of the fact that I am coming from this angle, now all of a sudden this area is no longer safe, right? So this is the reason why, especially as a DPS, you want to off angle and try and make sure that they don't have safe cover to stand behind. But it also means because of the fact that I have such great mobility, I can take more aggressive angles and try and go for those executes. But if it gets bad, I can also get out much easier. Even if I peek out of here, I can get back up to high ground. I can go over here. All of these areas around here are accessible to me, and they're not accessible to everyone else. So I a lot of times will abuse my ability or mobility and try and access those angles to apply more efficient damage to the enemy team who is trying to find cover. You can see there that they're not safe behind the cover. Now that we have the amplifier, I just try to pressure them out. I always try to reload behind cover because of the fact that I don't need any extra damage coming at me. Now I'm trying to follow up on what my Emma Frost is doing. I normally wouldn't dash directly into the enemy team, but because of the fact that my Emma Frost was ulting, I wanted to make sure that we secured the kill. Realistically, I don't think this is the best place for me to be, but as they're ulting, I am backing up and giving up this space because of this, as an assassin, once again, you're trying to find people who are, out of position or who have, used cooldowns that were vital to their survival. In this situation, there's nothing you can do to burst through the damage. You're tickling them in this ult. So instead, I look for people who are outside of the ult. So I see Psylocke here, so I go to meet and contest her for this space. I miss, and because of it, I die. I get rezzed, but it creates an opening in which my team is forced to use their ults. And once again, I am in this location, but this isn't like my favorite place, but even still, I can take a more aggressive angle because of the fact that I have 2 dashes, right? So my team, which doesn't have mobility, they're going to try and rely on this area and apply damage here. And knowing that, I am going to try and take a more aggressive angle over this way to try and provide more pressure from more angles. You don't want to like group up all next to each other, applying damage, because assassins like Psylocke don't do really well at just playing that Rock'em Sock'em Robots game, right? They don't apply or output enough damage. So you want to try and find angles in which you can attack the enemy and provide more efficient damage, as you might think, as I kind of call it. Now that they're ulting, and the reason why I've been holding my ult this entire time is because of the fact that I saw Invis Woman ult and I knew that Cloak and Dagger had her ult. So I was trying to force that ult to happen before I used my ult. Now, Psylocke ult, a lot of times in high elo, is very, very useless. Like, it doesn't get many kills, so you kind of have to really pull out a lot of abilities and a lot of ultimates. So in this situation here, I was waiting or trying to force the Cloak and Dagger ult, and now I am waiting and timing my engage. Once again, as a dive DPS, you don't have a lot of consistent damage, but you have really great burst windows, especially with like your ultimates. So I'd rather wait a few seconds and time my engage to get the most amount of value. Here, I can try and clean up who's here, and now I see that there's still 2 left. I thought there was more. My team, unfortunately, was not able to survive. There, if you'll notice, I've talked about this before, but as they jump on me, I position myself in a way in which I rotate and then I dash through to get myself closer to the health pack, right? Don't just think about what your mobility is going to do, like doing damage to someone. Also think of where it's going to put you afterwards and where you're going to position yourself later. Now, it's unfortunate that my team died and that I die here as well, but I was able to at least kill the supports and the Psylocke and pull the Captain America ult. And I got the res. So all in all, it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. But here, you can tell what's about to happen. This was when Emma was still very new, so I didn't quite understand how brutal the combo was. So this was a learning lesson for me. I now, as soon as I hear the diamond form from Emma Frost, I just walk away. I just try and keep my distance. So that one was a wasted res, and that's on me.
The final 10 seconds.
Here, I see that my team is falling over, so I know that I don't really have ult, so it's worth it for me to switch to Strange. I'm going to try and TP back to the point and provide assistance to my team.
Keep fighting until we have a winner.
I try to position my portal in a way in which I block off the LOS of the rocket ult and create some sort of like temporary cover for my team. But it is not enough, and we end up dying. But overall, because of the fact that I TP'd back, the enemy had to use their Emma Frost ult, and they also had to use their Psylocke ult. So, even though we used TP, it was not the worst thing in the world. We still pulled out quite a few ults. I hear, once again, when you hear Psylocke cloak, she's probably about to engage on your team. So I pull back then to prepare for who she's going to jump on, if it's going to be me or if it's going to be my teammates. So I'm going to try and assist with that, right? That bursty window that dive heroes have, like you can predict what they're going to do, against you because of the fact the moment you hear that cloak, they're probably going to try and engage. So if you back up for just a second and wait for it and then push them back out, there's a window after they have to leave that they can't really do a whole lot. So I like to, the moment I see or hear that they're about to engage in on me, try and contest that and then re-engage afterwards when that window is when that window of vulnerability is open for me. But here, this cap is very much done with me, understandably. So I try, as soon as I realize that I'm getting like overpowered, to just take who I can. And I end up getting a kill on the Psylocke, which is really lucky for me. But she gets rezzed, which is better than nothing. I could have gotten out of that, I think, if I would have done my dash instead of my invis. I don't know, maybe my brain turned off or something at the moment. That just happens.
Farewell.
And now I'm trying to go back, but I will take sometimes a second to grab the jump pack because this is like the most useful one in my opinion. But now that I've heard the enemy team engaging in on my team, I know that I really need to get out there to try and assist my team. And what I'm going to try and do is, I know that when I hear Captain America ulting, I'm not going to be able to do anything there to assist my team. Once again, I do little tiny mosquito bites. Like dive DPS can be very bursty in that window, but I'm not going to be providing a whole lot of value to my team up there. So I'm going to once again look to see who's at the back, especially because I have my ult. And I am able to force the Cloak and Dagger ult. And you're going to see here that when the enemy support ults come out, as a dive DPS, you can't do anything with it. So I don't want to waste my very valuable cooldowns by pumping damage into an area that is not going to get me any value. So I'm going to do my best to sit on the payload to stall it out. Because once again, I can do this because I have such great mobility that I can stay in a very dangerous location, but also control the objective in the same way that I would if I were a tank, right? This is another one of the reasons why I love dive DPS is, while other heroes would be like Hela or Bucky or Squirrel Girl act more like a butcher knife, the dive DPS acts more like an Exacto Knife or a surgeon, right? You're being very specific in your actions. And sometimes you need to execute certain people who have stood out of position. Sometimes you need to contest the objective. Like, you're able to do a lot with these kits. They're very versatile, but that also means that everything is going to come down to how quickly and how well you can make decisions and time your engages. So here I'm just trying to get them to not pay attention to me. And the moment I start to take damage and realize that it's no longer safe, now I get out, right? But now that I get out, I collapse in on like what my team is doing. And now, even though they were attacking that whole time and they had cloak and dagger ults, the payload hasn't really moved anywhere, right? So now that it's running out, now I can start to target the Psylocke. Because as you see, I'm not going to be able to do enough damage to kill the Cap. I'm not going to be able to do enough damage to kill the Mr. Fantastic, who's not going to do anything in this Invisible Woman ult. So I look for the squishy target, right? I am specifically trying to find what is the best use of my, left click, right click combo. And it's always like this, and majority of the time, it's the squishy. As soon as I get the execute on the squishy, I need to try and survive. I look and I see someone low in the back. Now, with Rocket Amplifier, as a dive DPS, all of a sudden now you can actually shoot shots that actually do a lot of damage. So what I'm going to do now is instead of trying to take an angle or do any sort of fancy trick, I'm just trying to overpower the enemy with the damage boost and the health that I've got from the Assault. Because even tanks can become squishy after that. But now, after I get the execute on her, I then immediately go to the next priority target, which is Cloak and Dagger in this instance, right? In this instance, I'm going to try and apply as much damage as possible and get the execute, but I don't get the execute. Now, as a dive DPS, like whatever you're trying to do, you're trying to do the cool flashy one-shot combos. But the higher up in rank that you climb, the more you need to recognize that you're not trying to completely fully get the kill. Sometimes what you're trying to do is apply enough damage and get out safely that someone else can eventually follow up and get the kill for you. Like right here. I'm relying on my team to follow up on the damage I'm doing. Here, there's a bit of a misunderstanding. I thought we were all going to collapse in on the Captain America. I was wrong. Apparently, I had that idea in mind, so I died for it. Sometimes it's just you're not on the same page as your teammates. It wasn't a bad idea. It was just not communicated properly. That was honestly a very lucky kill coming out of spawn. It was right for her to go for the res station, but she just unfortunately overextended, forgot about me coming out of spawn. And in that situation, it is important, like where she could have done better is that it is important for you to remember who's coming out of spawn, like who's died and when they're coming out, because of the fact that that's how you know whether or not an area like that is going to be safe or not. Now, here, for instance, once again, with Rocket ulting, I can't do anything here to help my team. And you're going to see me a lot of times always try and take those, once again, those angles in which my team can't access, but I can. I can take this aggressive angle over here because of the fact that I can be safe. And while my team is over here fighting, I don't really need to help or engage in on them. And also, the benefit of doing things this way and playing a dive DPS that requires less support from your team is that means that like the less healing you need from your supports, the more healing that your tanks and other DPS and other support can get, because you're not being super demanding on how much heals you need. And here, what you can see too is that when Rocket pumps his ult or busts his ult out, I can hit this safely in this position while standing still. And nothing up here in this position can see me or apply damage to me, so I can shoot this safely. This type of angle that I can specifically take as Psylocke is something that I can, truly only do with confidence as a Psylocke player. I can't do this as, a Bucky or a Hela, because their Captain America could easily just jump on me and punish me for being in this position. So being in here and taking these positions is crucial to being a successful dive hero. So now that that's down, now I know I can execute someone at the back. So once again, I go and I start looking at the people at the very back. Now, I recognize that in this situation, I have 3 people looking at me. And if there's 3 people looking at me, then that means that whoever is behind me is probably isolated, right? That means that if I have 3 people's attention on me here, my teammates are fighting a numbers game that they're winning behind me. So then I recognize when it's not worth it, especially given that this is Cloak and Dagger's bubble. I've pulled a resource. Captain America's here. Rocket is here. So instead, I turn to see what my teammates are doing. And this is where typically, yes, I understand that like you want to try and flank and dive the supports. But when I noticed that I wasn't probably going to kill anyone, I then turned to change my decision in that moment to prioritize a different pick of one of the tanks who was walking way much farther forward and way more out of position. And it's easier to execute that tank than it would have been to try and stay and fight both of the supports, right? I could have stayed and tried to distract both of the supports, but because I have such a bursty combo, I wanted to follow up on what my teammates were doing because that's far easier than trying to just do what is considered a good play on your own. It's better to just all collectively try and target someone than it is to try and each take your own individually good idea fights. So here, I cloak to get to the back because once again, targeting the person at the very back because they're not going to be paid attention to. And here, just like what I did to the Psylocke earlier, she does to me. I dash in on the res station because I thought I could get in there and that she wasn't going to see me. I was wrong. But I wanted to make sure they didn't have a res for this last fight. So here, once again, timing your engages is absolutely crucial. I don't need to rush out to this point. It is not capped yet. Emma is using her ult, and I know if I walk out there, I'm not able to use my ult, so I'm not going to rush, right? I'm going to trust that my team has hopefully got it handled. And if I have to, I'll rush out only at the very last second. If it gets to 0.01 meters and I stop it, it's still technically stopped. So if I can wait an extra second or two in here to keep myself alive, I'm going to do that. But now that I hear the ult running out, now I can time my engage and I can come out and I can dash. And now I see that the Emma Frost is isolated here and with no mobility, is a much easier target to try and kill. And luckily, I end up getting the Captain America. Here, once again, I'm not going to be able to kill the Mr. Fantastic, so who do I go for? Well, I see the Cloak and Dagger here. Cloak and Dagger is much easier for me to kill and also would stop the sustain from Mr. Fantastic, so I want to target her. And now, it's just clean up. Because you saw how from the very beginning, at first I dove, the supports, and then I saw Psylocke flanking, and then I chose to counter dive the Psylocke. And then there's also times where I would collapse in on the back line, realize I'm not going to get any value because I had already pulled resources out from both Cloak and Dagger and Rocket and Captain America, but I turn around and now I see the tank, and the tank is out of position, so my bursty combo works better on her than it does on trying to kill the high priority pick.
I fought Oni.
That bursty window, which you have as a dive, is all about how you use it and who you want to use it on, right? So here in this situation, I see Captain America, and he's been really good at staying alive this entire time. Ignore my crappy aim. So what I'm trying to do is pressure the crap out of him because I think to myself, okay, typically when I see a Captain America, I want to use my burst on him so that way I force him out. So that way he isn't stalling out the objective forever. So that's what I was trying to do here. And you can see that I'm holding him back, but they're still holding on to the payload. I get bursted pretty quick. I die a lot more than I normally do in this game. It was a combination of Emma Frost and Mr. Fantastic being meta early on in the season. I underestimated the amount of damage output they could do. So here, once again, I'm trying to make sure that Cap does not bother my team, so I'm pushing him out before we can walk forward. But I know that my team is still sort of respawning, so I'm not playing super aggressive. I'm trying to find those angles. I really don't like standing next to my team like this. But here I'm still, once again, I'm trying to make sure that Cap is not staying near my team. I'm forcing him out. But the problem is, as I realized very quickly here, I'm like, this isn't working. I'm not able to do enough damage to Emma Frost, Mr. Fantastic, and Captain America to get them to actually push back. And with the rest of my team as well, we're just not outputting enough damage. So now, being that surgical precision tool, I need to ask myself, who's the best target to look at right now? I was like, well, this isn't working, so I'm going to try the supports, right? After this, though. The team is using a bunch of ults, luckily. They do a really good job at holding us at the spawn door. And here, once again, now I'm just at this point charging my ult charge off them. But you can see here, this is the moment where I decide to ignore the Captain America. But once again, because I have such great mobility, I can get access areas that my team can't. So now, because I can do this, I need to try and target someone very specifically. And here, I see the rocket, and he dashes away. And now that I know that I pulled one of his dashes out, odds are he probably doesn't have another one because they tend to use them quite frequently. So I ult on top of his head to target him first. Because if I kill the rocket, then the res station won't work. But unfortunately, they were able to get a res off before I could fully kill him. But my ult does kill him, and I managed to do a lot of damage to the rocket ult. The unfortunate part of this is dying. However, the good part is because of the fact that we're so close to our spawn door, that trade is technically in my favor. Because now Rocket's going to take much longer to get back to the fight than I will. Once again, here, I'm not immediately jumping for the support. I know that I killed the rocket. I know that my team is safe in here. This tank is wildly out of position, and it's going to be much easier to kill her than it is to try and follow up on the squishies at the back. So I target her specifically. I'm applying as much damage as I can. And once again, even though I'm not necessarily 100% sure that I'm going to get the execute, I see that Iron Man is there to follow up on whatever I'm doing. Now I see that Captain America is ulting. I'm kind of ignoring him, and I go right back to whatever, the strategy I was doing before. I recognize and remember, hey, I killed Rocket first, which means that he's going to be coming back from spawn. So as Captain America is stalling on the payload, I want to go meet the Rocket. And now Psylocke is contesting me for space. I go and I fall back. And once again, once I jump onto the rocket and I try to execute him, Psylocke comes to meet me. I can't really win that 2v1. So I pull back and collapse back in on the Captain America on the payload because of the fact that he's stalling this out. The advantage of having such great mobility also means that in a fight, you can get access to enemies faster than anyone else. So your decision making is extremely important as a dive hero, right? It's not always as simple as targeting the squishies or targeting the support or targeting the DPS. You need to very quickly ask yourself, what would give me the most value right now? Is distracting the supports worth it? Or is there someone on the payload which I can follow up on that will, like a tank, that'll die quicker if I just use my full combo on them to follow up on what my team is doing? You're not always going to get the answer right, but that is going to be how you determine like how you win, because you can't just keep diving the enemy backline over and over again because sometimes it's not working. So here, now that we have the advantage, I'm just trying to cause staggers and push them back. Here, I'm pushing back the Psylocke, who has to run. And now I'm just trying to contest space, right? I don't want them... I know they're coming from this direction, so I'm holding this way, and I can see that my Emma Frost is on my right, holding that other space. Because once again, I can take these very aggressive angles. I see Cap coming in. I'm trying to force resources. Now, even though Mr. Fantastic is engaging on my team, I also know that he doesn't have his W ability, right? So he's, by meeting him at that doorway, I was able to force his defensive ability. And now I'm targeting the support walking through the door. But I see that my Emma Frost is ulting the enemy Emma Frost, and you're going to see me walk up and follow up on what my team is doing, right? I don't need to go and attack the supports. I want to follow up on what my team is doing. Now that I see Rocket shooting orbs again, I realized that earlier on that was our key to winning, was making sure that the supports didn't feel safe. Using that mobility to get to safety, and then seeing that my Cloak and Dagger is ulting and going back in. You're going to see a lot of the times as a dive DPS, you're going to dive the enemy backline, and then you're going to follow back on and pincer in on somebody that your team is attacking. And then you're going to rotate and go back up to safety. You're going to find an off angle. You are constantly trying to be somewhere, doing something, providing value, whether it's holding space, getting an assassination, or collapsing in on someone.
They don't look friendly.
So here I like to break that window in case I need to get up and in there. I'm pushing them back, and I'm pushing them back while I wait for the convoy to move up. I know that Psylocke is on my right. Somebody had called it out, so I go up to the high ground because I know that as Emma Frost pushes out the Psylocke, there's not many places where she can go, which means I want to try and meet her at that where she's going to be. using my mobility, I want to use it in a way where I'm predicting what the enemy is going to do, and then I collapse in on them, which leads to the execute. If I had just followed with my tank, I would have followed, and then the Psylocke would have jumped up and would have evaded both of us. But by following and collapsing in on her using that mobility, I was able to predict her movements and then get an execute and give us the advantage. So now they're in a 6v5. I don't really like fighting Emma Frost and Captain America as Psylocke. I don't get a whole lot of value out of it. So I go in the back. I try to get the execute on Rocket and it doesn't work. So instead I ult their backline, and I do so mostly to stay alive in this situation. A lot of times as a dive DPS, like you want to prioritize, you always want to prioritize staying alive. But a lot of times I'll use my ultimate as a way to buy time and hope that I can get a dash back up in time. It doesn't quite work, and it's really unfortunate that I just missed out on that. Once again, I was not prepared for the amount of damage that Mr. Fantastic was doing. This is very early on. So I was definitely not used to the damage output that he does. Once again, always breaking like windows and stuff, making sure I have areas to go to.
Us against the world.
As the enemy support is ulting, I am pulling back and I am just charging my ultimate here, right? Nothing can be done here. You're always trying to pump damage. You're always trying to be a distraction. You're always trying to provide some sort of value as a dive DPS. What you really want to do is make sure that the enemy team never feels super comfortable. But I also don't really like to stand anywhere, too close to my team. I like to push up with my team if I'm resetting my cooldowns, or there's not really much else for me to do. But I like to, once my team is pushing from one angle, you're going to see me rotate to a side or rotate to a high ground and try and collapse in on them from different angles. So what I'll do is I'll go with them and then take an off angle, use my bursty combo, try to get an execute. When it doesn't work, I get back out to rejoin my team and then reset that cooldown over and over and over again.
Pulse charge, fire.
So here I'm just trying to apply pressure with my team. And we get very lucky that Emma Frost is overextended and we get a quick execute. Now I'm just trying to follow up on whatever she's doing. Because once again, I don't want to try and reposition at a time when my team is using their ultimates. When my team is ulting, I need to get in there as fast as possible, even if it means using my cooldowns. Here in this situation, once again, I heard Psylocke ult, so I immediately turned to go, she's going to jump on us. Here, once again, I can take a very aggressive angle because of the fact that I have a dash to get out. My team can shoot from this direction, and now you can see that as my team is entirely shooting from here, now this area is no longer entirely safe as I can apply pressure to them. And if I were to get into danger, I have a dash to get out. And we get a nice clean execute on the Captain America. Now I'm trying to follow up on the supports who are at the back using the advantage of the Cloak and Dagger ult. I don't feel like I was going to be able to do anything to Mr. Fantastic, so I turn instead to look at Emma Frost and apply pressure to her, knowing that she doesn't really have supports here with her. Once I push her back out, now I collapse back in on whoever is keeping the payload from moving. Now I see the Psylocke. Execute her. But you see how Emma Frost was going to walk out, and then I met her at the door, pushed her back, but I'm not going to chase that kill. I'm not going to chase the Emma. I'm going to collapse back in on the enemy who is at a disadvantage, sheer number wise. I don't want them to get a cheeky execute on anybody on my team. Once again, I'm going to try and apply pressure to the rocket ult. Now, I dash through not just to do more damage to the rocket ult, but just like I was talking about before, because I have really good mobility. Now, as my team is shooting from this direction, I can provide an opposite sort of perpendicular angle in which to apply pressure. And I still have another dash in case it gets dangerous and I need to get out. Because now I can get much easier access to Rocket here, in which he can be collapsed on from all sides. And after I push him out, I dash through the Strange to try and get to a safer position. And in the process, I collapse back in on another tank. But luckily, my team already had her. Knowing I have my ult and we're so close to the objective, I want to ult the point. Psylocke ult is really kind of useless the higher up you climb. So you want to do it when your team can follow up on that damage or if people are already low. So I used it there thinking that might work.
Psionic link.
Here, I'm applying pressure because once again, I tend to fall back into the sort of default position that you might find DPS when my cooldowns are not up. This is what happens when you have to play dive is you have to retreat to a safer location. And as Psylocke, I can get my cooldown shorter by shooting people. So I'm retreating to a safer location in which to try and apply damage to get that to shorten down. Here, Psylocke engages in on my team and gets an execute on the Cloak and Dagger. But I recognize that her ult isn't going to target me while I'm invisible. And I know that Psylocke is going to pop back up in the center of her ult, which means a lot of times Psylocke's use their abilities and they don't really have a whole lot to get out afterwards. Or they might have already engaged, press ult, and they were already low. So I'm cloaking early to close the gap in on her
Down to 30 seconds.
and try and get the execute.
Against the world.
And very luckily, I end up hitting the rocket as well. It was a total accident on that one. But that's what I mean by recognizing that someone is out of position or someone's made a mistake and knowing and, playing, knowing how Psylocke works. When she ults, after she reappears from her ult, there's like a half a second where she doesn't really have the chance to move very well. So I was banking on her sort of being out of position and taking at least a lot of damage in that moment, if not getting executed. So that's where I was trying to plan ahead of being like, okay, I can follow up on this, right?
Double KO.
So now you can see me here. I start to retreat because once again, even though I don't have any cooldowns, I can take an angle in which if I'm standing here, I can apply pressure to this tank without the Mr. Fantastic seeing me and without being anywhere near the Cloak and Dagger ult. And I know I'm not going to be able to kill her, but I will be able to shorten my cooldowns.
Pulse charge.
And once again, following up on what my team is doing, I'm trying now to walk into the ally support ult because once I'm in here, I'm basically invincible. I'm trying to apply pressure to whoever's out of position. Mr. Fantastic is really, really difficult to kill. So for me, I was targeting the tank instead. Mr. Fantastic just never seems to die, so I figured I'd have an easier time with that Frost. I got her low, and very luckily, my Iron Man helps follow up and get the kill on her. Now I collapse on Mr. Fantastic. I'm looking around for the portal, and I see the Psylocke, because as she dashed in on me, I knew that I had to fight and take that engage, but also she dashed in such a very dangerous spot that she didn't have much to get out. Now it's just about playing safe,
Keep fighting until we have a winner.
making sure that my team is there to help, because I'm staying on the payload to make sure it doesn't, we keep overtime and we keep the game going, applying as much pressure and hitting my right click every chance I can get, trying to focus specifically the squishies, which you're going to see here. Once my team regroups with me and my buddies on tank tells me, hey, I'm here, I'm on point. I use this as an opportunity where, as they're tanking all that damage, I then use my cloak to get to an off angle. And once again, now I have access to the backline, right? I have access to the backline. If it gets dicey, I have a dash to get out. But because of it, I get a very good execute on the Cloak and Dagger. Now I can target the rocket and try and get him executed. And once again, even though I didn't kill him the first time, I just dashed through, prioritized staying alive, and then retargeted to the tank. And then once I dash through the tank, I see the rocket again. I reprioritize to the rocket, right? As a Hela player or like a Bucky, you're going to stand behind your team and you're just going to apply so much damage that you will eventually overpower whoever's in front of you. But those off angles that you create as a DPS allow you to have really solid openings that you can create for your team by getting quick kills, right? Now, off angling you can still do as like Hela or Bucky, but you run the risk of the fact that if they jump on you, you're at a disadvantage, right? Because you don't have as much mobility. Because of the fact that when you're playing a dive here, you have such great mobility, you want to take those aggressive angles when you have your cooldowns up. So knowing that I had tanks who could stand on the payload for me, as you saw before, I was rotating around to take that aggressive angle because it's much more efficient then to then be able to target that backline because I could always get back out to safety.
Double KO.
Now it's just clean up from here.
Today we onto the God's press.
But
Final score.
you saw throughout the entire game, I'll take a look around through the map in different angles here. There There's always a lot of different places in which you can go, in which you can access that the enemy team, or not the enemy team, the other types of DPS just can't access, right? As Psylocke, I am frequently dashing up into safety because of the high ground. You can be up on the high ground, you can apply pressure at the back, and you can look from here from this angle. I can see the rocket, nobody else can see me. If I'm up here, I can shoot at the rocket and nobody else can really see me, right? You want to be using that mobility to dive in on the enemy team when they're unsuspecting, and also apply pressure from areas where it is actually much safer to apply pressure from up here on the rocket than it would be lots of times to be applying pressure directly next to your team. So you want to be trying to use your mobility at all times to try and take off angles to get to the sides of the enemy and force them back. Even if you don't get the kill, that off angle pressure forces them to back up a lot of times. Um, and you just constantly want to be doing that. The one thing you want to be careful about when uh, choosing when to rotate is if your team is fighting, you don't really have an opportunity to a lot of times rotate. You don't have you can't take time to reposition because the time that you take to reposition, your teammates could die because in that time as a dive hero, uh, that downtime, that small few seconds of you not being active in the fight could be enough for the enemy team to get a pick. So you have to choose when you're using your mobility and when you're trying to get around for an assassination when you know that your team is in a safe spot, uh, or when you know that your tanks are successfully absorbing a lot of that damage without being overpowered. Because yeah, the worst thing in the world you could do as a dive DPS is try and spend too much time trying to get into the perfect position to get an execute. You want to very much play with your team and push up with your team and use that mobility to get to places very quickly and make actions happen very quickly. And you always want to make sure as well that you have a plan to get out, right? All too often, I see people use all of their abilities to get a kill and they don't have a plan as to how they're going to get out. You'll always see me save some sort of dash or have some sort of plan to get out. And when I die, it's usually because of the fact that it was something that I didn't expect to happen, right? I didn't expect like Mr. Fantastic damage, or I didn't expect the sort of burst from Emma Frost at the time. Like a lot of the times when I die, it's me thinking I have my teammates up and that I made a good play, and it turns out I wasn't being effective quickly enough. Like when I ulted the two supports on first point on defense before, right? But you because of the fact that you have like that very bursty window and you have such great ways to execute people, it's all going to be about how well you are at timing those engages and targeting the right priority picks. Because it's not going to be as simple all the time, like I said, as saying, hey, target the supports. Sometimes you target the supports. Sometimes you target the DPS. Sometimes you target the tanks. It's who's out of position, but also who's a problem, right? As Psylocke, if I notice that there is a Hawkeye that is being an absolute menace to my team, I will make it my goal to make that Hawkeye's life very difficult. And as an assassin character, you and as a dive hero, you have the benefit of being able to do that. You are what I would consider a problem solver, right? Like if someone on the enemy team is a problem, you have the tools in your toolkit to deal with them a lot of times. So, dive is for a very specific group of people. I like it a lot because there's always something going on. It's always very actiony. There's always feels like, I always feel like there's something I could have done differently in order to, win a game under control as a dive hero versus like Hella and Bucky. I know how to play those characters and know how they work, but rotating and clicking heads isn't quite my play style. Uh, but both are super effective. It comes down to preference and what one you tend to gravitate more towards. Anyway, I did my best to try and cover like taking those off angles, timing engages, timing your ultimates. I hope I covered it all. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And yeah, thank you for watching.